The Blast from Our Past Network.
Podcasting After Dark presents TV Obscura, a deep dive into underrated and unknown television shows from our youth. Cartoons, sitcoms, cop shows, and much more. Sit back and enjoy some nostalgic fun with TV Obscura.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of 2024's TV Obscura. I am one third of the TV Obscura team, Corey, aka Sleazy C. Joined with me, as always, are my two brothers from other mothers, Zach, the total snackhead Schaefer, and Diallo, the Armageddon Jackson. And we are kicking off the year with three wild live-action TV shows. We are going to be billing this collection as Cali Crime Fighters because two of the shows take place in San Francisco. One of them is in LA. Zach and I were discussing prior that we wish all of them took place in San Francisco, and we would call it San Francisco Crime Fighters, but it's okay. We're talking Cali Crime Fighters.
The Californians.
First up, I will be reviewing Partners in Crime, 1984. Then Diallo will be discussing Hooperman, which came out in 1987. And then Zach will be bringing it home with Max Monroe, Loose Cannon, 1990. Real quick, Zach, I think it's safe to say you have a TV show type for sure.
Oh, I have a type. Period. I have a male type. I have a man type. I have an aesthetic. I have a music.
Well, Zach, you sound pretty good for possibly having the flu at the moment. So, guys and gals, we're going to kind of dig into these pretty quickly.
Run on fumes, baby!
So we don't want Zach to die. And I can't really say I hope everyone had a good New Year's because we were technically recording this before New Year's. But
no, we did. We all three of us had great New Year's. Our balls dropped. The ball dropped. And it was fabulous. I'm going to be on fire tonight. Like this... Woo!
Actually, I will ask real quick, Diallo and Zach, do you guys have any plans for New Year's? We usually kind of hang out with our sister and brother-in-law. We don't really go out or anything. Do you guys have plans at all?
Diallo?
I usually hang out with Zach and those guys for the first, the afternoon for, Irish New Year?
We do Irish New Year's at 4 o'clock during the day because it's New Year's Eve somewhere
nice.
In the world.
Do you start drinking at 4 o'clock?
Yeah, and then I'm in bed by 9.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then, Diallo, where do you go afterwards then?
I usually go to my friend's house and they watch, I usually stay up just to watch the New York New Year, so 9 o'clock. And then they do fireworks on the bluffs out here in Santa Monica, and then I go home and I go to bed because I'm not staying up till midnight because time is a construct and it doesn't really matter what number we put on the year, and I wake up and nothing feels different. So
this is true.
Word and word.
word and word.
Overrated.
Well, plus Diallo, you went to college in Vermont anyway, so you can always be like, it's an East Coast thing anyway, so 9 o'clock is fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Whatever.
How about you, Corey? You gonna stay up late and trip the night fantastic?
Probably yes. We probably will. We'll probably go to bed around 2 or 3 or something like that. Myra will have off work the next day, so we can just sleep in and pretty much do absolutely nothing. So
that sounds terrible, to be honest with you. It sounds terrible.
Well, yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that statement. And we do.
Daddy, wake up! It's time to talk about Zelda. It's 7 a.m. Got 5 hours sleep.
Oh, Bodie, he loves his Zelda. We know. We'll talk about that on Wrap Up After Dark next week. So, all right, guys, but let's kick this off because we have some I think we have a lot to talk about with these three shows, to be honest with you. But I'll kick us off with Partners in Crime, 1984. Partners in Crime was an American crime drama television series set in San Francisco that aired on NBC for 13 episodes in 1984. It was created by William Driscoll and starred Linda Carter and Lonnie Anderson as two women brought together by the murder of their mutual ex-husband, Raymond. Linda Carter playing Carol Stanwyck and Lonnie Anderson playing Sidney Kovac. And by the way, back in 1984, it blew everybody's mind that Sydney was a girl's name, which I found.
Oh, must have had a crazy daddy.
So that was so weird. It was just, anyways, we'll talk about that. So Carol
Stanwyck. Wait, Mrs. Stanwyck?
I know, Fletch. I know. And Sidney Kovac set out to find the killer and eventually end up running the detective agency Raymond has left them. They are assisted by Raymond's mother, Elaine Heckart, known for probably like First Wives Club, Lieutenant Vronsky, Leo Rossi, we all know from Halloween 2, and Raymond's
Relentless.
And Raymond's assistant, Herman Shane, Walter Olkowicz. I recognize him. I know he was in like Twin Peaks Firewalk with Me. He also on Batman animated series did the voice of Falcone. But I think I butchered his last name though. So real quick, getting into my backstory for the show, I never even heard of it. But I follow like an Instagram account called I think Rabbit Ears TV, something like that. And they always post pictures of like TV shows from the 70s, 80s, 60s, stuff like that. And I kind of used that to sort of get ideas for TV Obscura. And they posted this amazing promo shot of Linda Carter and Lonnie Anderson. And I was like, what is Partners in Crime? And how have I never heard about this? So,
and why can't we see your hands?
Exactly. But seeing as how growing up, born in 78, growing up in the 80s, Linda Carter and Pam Grier were my first two crushes growing up. Clearly, I have a curvy type as well. But I was a big Wonder Woman fan, so I was shocked that I'd never heard of this show. But it was only 13 episodes, which explains a lot. It was only on from I think September to December of that year of 1984. And I'll just, before we kind of get into, general discussion stuff, I will say that I asked my cousin Chris, who's about 5 or 6 years older than me, if he had heard of the show or if he remembered watching it, and his reply was, "Oh, yes." So I guess, it landed in some people's laps. It just never made it to mine. But at 87, I was 9 years old. So, that makes sense. Before we get into the whole general discussion about it, Diallo, did you have any experience with Partners in Crime going into this?
It was more, I remember it being promoted, but I don't believe if I ever watched the episode, I don't remember. I do, when you brought it up, I do remember that it was a show with the two actresses, but yeah, 1984, I would have been about 12 or 13 years old, so okay. I don't really, definitely wasn't in my, obviously Linda Carter and Lonnie Anderson were in my realm of oh, I should watch this, but the subject matter of the show wasn't really the type that I think I would have jumped into. I don't know when it, what day of the week it came on either. So, and I was probably more into watching whatever the A-Team or whatever at the time. So, I didn't. It missed me for the most part.
And I kind of forgot to look it up, but WKRP in Cincinnati came out before this, right? That was late 70s.
Well, long before that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I should have mentioned also as well, I was a big WKRP in Cincinnati fan. So I used to watch that. I used to watch,
Sing it, Diallo.
Taxi.
Sing it, Diallo.
Baby, did you ever wonder whatever became of me? I'm living on the air in Cincinnati, WKRP.
Dude, awesome, bro. Awesome.
Oh man, it's like it just goes through my body. I can't help it. I just gotta sing.
I will say that this the theme song for this one's not quite as catchy.
I'd never heard it. That was what was blowing me away.
That's mind blowing right there. That's
Yeah.
an exclusive. Exclusive.
Breaking.
Right?
Zach, what is your history with this?
0. Yeah, I mean, just like you guys, I had a crush on both leading ladies. Never heard of this show, and never, never knew it existed. But I'm so glad I watched it, and I'm so glad that you brought it to TV Obscura because it was pleasantly surprising.
Well, just go for it, buddy. Since none of us have seen it, so you just start leading the direction of the general discussion.
Just for timing's sake, I watched the second episode, not the pilot. I watched the second episode titled Celebrity. And in that episode, it's referenced that they took over the business from their dead husband. So, you get a little bit of like, oh, that's why they're doing what they're doing. But it's, and I'm biting off of what Diallo said to us online. It's essentially The Bodyguard. Vanessa Williams is a singer, and she has a stalker, and it's up to the partners of crime to basically be her bodyguards. And hilarity ensues. No, I'm kidding. And so as I'm watching it, first thing that struck me was that you get to see Vanessa Williams sing 3 times in this episode. And I hadn't seen her sing since we broke down Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. And if you want to know our take on that, go listen to that episode way back when, over a year or 2 years ago, I think.
Is it sad that I forgot she was in that movie?
No, because she's actually not really in a whole lot of it. She's like in 3 or 4 scenes, maybe tops. But anyways, this, like, immediately I'm struck by the quote unquote guest appearances. Maybe these guys were not as, 84. Billy Drago was a big deal back then. Billy Drago, of course, from Invasion USA and countless bad guy roles like The Untouchables. The Untouchables, he was amazing in that.
You got him? I got him.
Oh, so good, dude. The soundtrack for that too, by the way.
Yeah.
But no, that and Leo Rossi, who I love, and of course Vanessa Williams. And the dialogue is just hilarious in it. Like, we talked about Sydney, Lonnie Anderson's character. They're like, well, one of them says, must have had a crazy daddy, and then another person says, girl named Sydney? Huh. Like that's, wow. Okay. I forgot. Well, no, I did not forget. I was reminded yet again, while there are many things in the 80s that totally sucked, and acceptance of names and earrings and long hair on dudes, like that was a taboo back then. But, you get to see Lonnie Anderson playing a stand-up bass, which is amazing, and super awkward white people dancing at the end, which is phenomenal. I mean, I don't want to take over too much more, but man, like it screams late 70s vibes to me. Even though it came out in 84, and it also reminded me of like a CBS show. When I found out that this was on NBC, I was kind of surprised. I was like, oh, this feels like it would have been perfect after like Murder, She Wrote or Matlock, which I think Matlock was on ABC. But anyways, there's cocaine. There's psychos. There's little spoons. I think if I was a kid watching this, I'd be like, oh, that's what those spoons are for?
Well,
yeah,
you mentioned,
that's my 2 cents.
Well, you mentioned the, how they kind of, dropped that little bit of dialogue in there about how they took over the agency from their ex-husband. And, of course, Vanessa Williams, like, looks at him. And they're like, we weren't married to him at the same time. So that's a little bit of a joke, too. But the pilot episode's intro theme song actually has dialogue that sets everything up, which is weird because it took place before the pilot, so it's everything you learned in the pilot, essentially, but then they dropped the dialogue for the episodes moving forward, where I'm like, you probably should have actually kept that for the episodes moving forward.
Well, it was a 2-hour pilot.
Hour and a half
2-hour pilot.
on YouTube, so it probably aired at 2 hours, yeah.
And you're telling me that the intro to the show, which is in the beginning of the show, right?
Yeah.
It had basically the dialogue breaking down what happens on the show.
Well, yeah,
before anything
of what the show is. Like, these two ladies, their husband and then their ex-husband died, and then they took over the agency, and I'm like, well, we haven't even actually seen that yet.
Was it a little like Charlie's Angels-esque, where this is it?
No, I mean,
I think
it was the mom. It was the mom narrating it, I believe.
Okay.
But yeah, anyways, it was more helpful than the episode 2's intro, which was just the music. It was all the same visuals, but they just dropped the dialogue track and kept the music. But Diallo, what were your thoughts on this one? I'll finish it up when you guys are done. What were your thoughts on you watched 2 episodes, right?
No, I just watched it was kind of weird because the second episode was actually listed as the first one on, I think, IMDb.
IMDb listed celebrity as the first, because I was trying to find the people from the first episode, and it's not even listed as the pilot anywhere.
Mm-hmm. But it clearly was not the first episode because I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And I had to look it up in the middle of watching it, I had to look up to see why they were in the situation they were in. And it's pretty they should have just had that in the opening music or whatever. I wasn't terribly impressed with it. It was fine. I just felt I was watching it and I was like, I can see why it didn't last. That was my main thought. It also that episode also kind of felt like a weird, like, not a backdoor pilot. I don't know how you would do it, like a promotional. They were trying to push, what's her name?
Vanessa Williams.
Vanessa Williams. Yeah, it felt like they were just like, because she was like 2 years away from having won Miss America or whatever. I think it was 82. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and this was if this aired in September. Sorry to interrupt, but if this aired in September, this comes about 2 months after the fact that she almost dropped her title because she posed for Penthouse magazine. She didn't pose for Penthouse, but whoever took those erotic photos of her back 2 years prior in '82 sold them to Penthouse, and there was a whole big scandal. So she was like in recovery mode, I think, as far as making a comeback.
I mean, yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, I remember it because it's black stuff, so I know about it, guys. She just like that whole thing. I mean, it was a thing, but it was more about her dropping the title than anything else.
Yeah.
It like slightly tarnished her reputation, but she had already started to move into trying to do more like other things, and they were trying to push the music side of her. She didn't really. I think it was like in the late '80s when she I think she might have dropped like '86 or '87 when she dropped her first album. So this actually felt like it was just trying to position her as the star after coming off of the Miss America. I don't know that it necessarily had to do anything with rehabbing her like a PR wash. I don't even think that pipeline would even work. But but for her career, it worked, right? Because she ended up having a really good career as a singer for quite a while, and then she starred on Ugly Betty, which was the peak of my relationship with her. So
but what about, how about this, what about Lonnie Anderson and Linda Carter?
I was never a Lonnie Anderson guy, even like back when I was a kid. Like I never was like Lonnie Anderson, but obviously I was Linda Carter. But
yeah,
I was thought, obviously, I mean, I'm not saying Lonnie Anderson isn't like, she wasn't like hot for her day or anything, but just wasn't like my thing. So it was the dynamic between them, I thought just needed work. I don't know what to say. It was kind of there, but it wasn't, and I feel like they just needed to work on their characterization a little bit more, and to bring something more out than just Linda Carter and Lonnie Anderson walking around the city doing stuff. But I feel bad, like, not like saying great stuff. I don't think it was terrible, but I also just kind of saw why it only lasted, I think it was like 8 episodes or 13 episodes or something.
No, man, don't feel bad. I actually sort of am landing around where you landed for this. There's a lot I liked. I'm going to talk about it. But for the most part, I was like, okay, it's. I think the best way to put it is, like you said, I can see why it was only 13 episodes. Out of the 3 shows that we watched, it was probably my least favorite, and it's the one I picked. It's funny, too, because that episode, they didn't have as much chemistry as they did in the pilot. So I actually watched the pilot, and I watched the celebrity one, the one you guys both watched. So freaking, I spent like 2.5 hours with perfect. I was gonna say perfect strangers, partners in crime.
Oh man!
And in 2.5 hours, I probably only got about 5 minutes worth of cleavage out of that, and I gotta say that. That was impressive on their part, because I will say one of the things I think they did a good job of, they didn't like overly sexualize them. And I think they could have, and I think it could have gone in a direction that we could all see it going in. And a lot of the jokes didn't have anything to do with that, and they didn't put them in anything too revealing until sort of like they had to get dressed up for like a going out sort of thing, and that's when they kind of did it. So kind of like it felt natural. It didn't feel like they were being sexualized, and weirdly I was disappointed by that.
And also too, I think Leo Rossi's character, who he's a police detective, he's clearly has a crush on Sydney, and
that's a horrible name for a girl.
I mean,
madness.
Sydney,
Madness.
A girl's name. And nowadays I'm like, I would never. I would kind of flip flop if you said the person's name is Sydney. I might assume, well, what they say about people who assume. But I thought it was like kind of cool the way they handled that. It was very like, it wasn't over the top, wasn't overly sexualized for 2 women that I wouldn't say have been exploited, but they've been like, admired for their figures.
Yeah.
And this is putting them in a different light. So I give props to the attempt. It was kind of awkward at times, because I'm like, man, Linda Carter's character was overly clothed. Like at one point she looks like she's dressed up like Sherlock Holmes when she's taking pictures of one of the bad guys, and I'm like, oh, you're really going for that sleuth look. That's working for you. But I mean, for me, I just like seeing, and this kind of is a recurring thread through most of the shows, some of these character actors that we grew up loving, watching in other things, and seeing them and like, oh yeah, this is so cool, because this is where you cut your teeth when you weren't making movies. It's like, if you're a character actor or a supporting actor, you go to TV.
To that point, I very much enjoyed Leo Rossi in the first 2 episodes. He really wasn't in either of them all that much. He wasn't even in the pilot all that much, but I liked him. I enjoyed like his vibe. It's like he walked this razor thin edge between sleazy and charming, and I was like, oh, that is a tough act right there, but I think he pulled it off. I don't know if later episodes, he trips and falls, but for the 2 episodes I saw, I thought he did a really good job, and I dug his vibe. And then I also, you guys didn't see it, but in the pilot episode, Linda Carter's character gets into a little bit of trouble with this, because she likes to travel via courier, like free flights via courier. That's kind of like her thing. But someone steals her bags, and the courier company thinks that she did it, so they kind of have her arrested. And the guy, when she gets to the airport, the head of the couriers guy, he's like, I'm having a bad day. My boyfriend just dumped me this morning, and blah, blah. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I was like, that's neat that they kind of, it didn't make any pomp and circumstance about it. They just threw it out there. And then I was like, oh, they probably got away with it in their heads because it takes place in San Francisco. And then in Hooperman, we're going to see a couple gay characters. And I'm like, I feel like this, being mid-'80s, I feel like this is kind of rare. And I think it's because both shows take place in San Francisco. So I think at the time, I'm guessing the whole country was like, there's just so many gays out there in San Francisco that it's okay to put them on TV or something. But I will say, in the Partners in Crime episode, he just mentioned it, and that was it. Like, he wasn't quote-unquote flamboyant or anything like that, and I thought it was positive representation, said as a straight white guy. Also,
I love how your tone
right. I had to make sure everyone knows.
Everybody knows.
And then I will say at the end of the that was the pilot. Anyways. Yeah, the pilot was really interesting, actually. I thought the pilot was infinitely better than the celebrities episode. There was a lot more to it, not only just learning about their backstory and kind of, sort of how they kind of put them together and everything. There was also this sort of, they had to do these, the will was set up in a certain way where, like, they had to read it in different parts for different people. It was like a whole thing. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the pilot infinitely more than I did the Vanessa Williams episode, even though it had Billy Drago in it, which was like, Billy Drago! And then he's only in it for like maybe 10, 15 minutes.
No, but he's got, this isn't spoiling anything. He's got a connection between, he's got a thing for dilapidated like apartment rooms because he's in Invasion USA.
Yeah.
He has kind of a rundown apartment room, and he's same with this one.
Except in this one, he doesn't get his dick and balls shot off. But yeah, I enjoyed it overall. I don't think, even at 13 episodes and having them all available on YouTube, I really don't see myself kind of watching anymore. I like both Lonnie Anderson and I like Linda Carter, and I think they're beautiful. And Leah Rossi was great, but if he's going to be in it as much as he was in the second episode, which was like 5 minutes, I need him in it for more. Like, honestly, he would bring me back more than they would at this point.
You should rent Relentless with Judd Nelson. Judd Nelson plays a serial killer.
Is that the one where he's cutting
Leo
through the newspaper on the cover?
Yeah, Leo Rossi's the main like detective in that. So he's a good guy. You should watch him in that. He's good.
Okay,
in that.
you've mentioned that one before as well, so maybe we'll cover that on Pad one of these days. Yeah, I liked it. Didn't love it. I think I kind of land where Diallo landed on it, where it's like, yeah, I see why it only lasted 13 episodes. Diallo, any final thoughts on Partners in Crime?
No, like, the idea of it, like, I remember when it was advertised, and there's just, I think all they were doing was just kind of like banking on those two actresses.
The sex appeal aspect.
Yeah. And like I said, and when I actually watched this, I just felt like, yeah, they didn't really add more than just them appearing. So which is unfortunate because I think it, kind of has the potential to be a lot more. Also, just that episode that I did watch, I don't know if that was the best example because, again, it seemed to be more about trying to do something with Vanessa Williams. And so she kind of overtook the episode, I think. So, like, she had, like you said, she had like 3 solid song numbers. And, like, so if I had watched another episode, I might have a different take. But I didn't. So here we are.
Well, and I can say between the pilot episode and that episode, they also didn't set up the two leads as being some kind of an odd couple scenario. Like they're both kind of like, they don't really like butt heads or anything. They almost become friends like quickly. It's like you're missing like having a lot of drama and tension here by just do some kind of odd couple scenario here, but they don't really do that. And then the characters almost just become sort of interchangeable, and tonally the show isn't quite a drama, it isn't quite a comedy, it's kind of in that middle area, but because it's the 80s, and just like in Hooperman, apparently you just get giant bits of property willed to you in the 80s, which is kind of nice.
I mean, that's what everyone complains about boomers, right?
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. Zach, any final thoughts on Partners in Crime?
Yeah, I just popped in my head now. I think about other shows that feature like, a tag team, and typically, one maybe overpowers the other. This felt like, at least with the writing and the way it was, overall the approach to the show, there tried to be a balance in there, giving them equal screen time, giving them their selective moments. Lonnie Anderson seems to be a little bit more, based on the episode we saw, a little more street tough, a little more savvy. I thought it was funny that, you're talking about San Francisco where it's set, but she interacts with a bunch of people on the street, like playing checkers. And I'm like, is she in New York now? Because they all have New York accents right now. Hey, Sydney. Hey, it's great to see you.
Okay, so you guys didn't get that from the episode you watched. Yeah, Sydney is from the San Francisco streets. That's her backstory. Like, she was like not like a street, person, but she was like lower, whatever, and she was trying to aspire to be bigger. But you learn that in the pilot episode. And whereas Linda Carter's character comes from money, but her family sort of ran out of money. So she's kind of has this hoity-toityness to her, but she's actually broke, although all of that becomes moot once they, inherit so they were trying to like bring them from different areas together, but they kind of but because Lonnie Anderson's character was sort of a successful bassist, she's doing a little bit better for herself, and because of Linda Carter's family not having any money anymore, like they kind of just brings them back down to the same level essentially, and thus creating no tension, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There was a scene where it was opening, and I think there was something on the table or whatever, and I think I was just starting to get used to what the show was, and it was kind of pulling back, and I imagined that the Lonnie Anderson character was like a Slav, like Oscar from The Odd Couple, right? And then, but then she wasn't, and then I was like, that would have been like the perfect sort of like juxtaposition to Linda Carter's character, and what you're talking about actually makes it even make more sense, because they added that backstory bit, but she didn't play that really like fully. So it's almost like she still wanted to be Lonnie Anderson, or one of the directors. I'm not gonna say it was like her fault or anything, but it was like she wanted to still be Lonnie Anderson without actually playing the character that she was supposed to be playing. So she looked classy. There was nothing visually that told me that she was from the streets or whatever.
Well, would you guys agree that having her play a classical stand-up bass versus a rock and roll bass was probably not the best choice?
Yeah.
If they want to portray her as a little more tough and street.
No,
like,
seriously.
Why are you playing?
Yeah.
And she's good too, by the way. Her character is.
Yeah.
It's really silly. At least everyone listening, if you just want to skip to the last 15 minutes of this show or last 20 minutes, that's the best part, because you see the twist, then you see the third act unfold, and you're like, oh my God, this is really amazing, terrible dancing.
Yeah.
Linda Carter
it's
was
cringy.
dancing. She dances better than Julia Roberts in Leave.
I've heard.
Yeah, Leave the World Behind.
Leave the World Behind.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is for sure.
Do they dance as well as Elaine from Seinfeld?
No one does.
They dance better than Elaine for sure.
Hey everybody, co-host Corey here. I just wanted to take a second and say thank you to all of our Patreon members who help support the show. Each month, they get access to The Carpenter Factor, Wrap Up After Dark, and all kinds of other fun exclusive content. You can sign up for our Patreon over at patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. Again, that's patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. Other ways you can help support the show and help us grow is leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We also have a merch store where you can pick up a t-shirt or two, as well as some other fun items. You can find every link to our podcatchers, to our merch store, to Patreon, everything at podcastingafterdark.com. That's podcastingafterdark.com. Now back to the show. All right, Diallo, are you ready to talk about the national treasure that was John Ritter in Hooperman?
I was born ready. So Hooperman is a light-hearted drama. I took a writing course one time, and I was told it's not a dramedy, so I'm not allowed to call it a dramedy, but it is called a light-hearted drama television series that aired on ABC from September 23rd, 1987 to July 19th, 1989. John Ritter. We all know him from the seminal TV classic Three's a Crowd.
You son of a bitch.
You son of a bitch.
Problem child.
He starred as a SF police inspector, Harry Hooperman. The series was created by the legendary Stephen Baccio. How do you say it's Baccio?
I think it's Botchko.
Botchko.
Botchko?
Yeah.
Who is probably most famous for Cop Rock.
Yes.
You took the words out of my mouth.
Yep.
He also did a few smaller things that you might not have heard of. They're super obscure. There's one called Hill Street Blues, L.A. Law, Doogie Howser, NYPD Blue. There actually is one that's, no sarcasm, more obscure, The Birds of Paradise, which I feel like is something that we could cover on this show at some point, and Capital Critters. It was co-created with Terry Louise Fletcher, she was a writer on Cagney and Lacey, one of the main writers on Cagney and Lacey, and she co-created L.A. Law also with Botchko. And I think that caused like some rift between them, and there was some suing that went on, and they went their separate ways. So the pilot actually won an Emmy Award, a 1988 Emmy Award for Outstanding Directing in a Comedy Series, which is probably like why I liked the pilot so much, actually.
Yeah.
So it also starred Deborah Ferrantino as Susan Smith. She, in the pilot episode, you see her come in at the very end, but she is sort of like a main recurring character for the rest of the series, and sort of like a romantic foil for John Ritter's character. You might know her. I know her most from Earth 2. She played Devon Adair, who the last name Adair is actually the name I used for my one of my main characters in my fantasy novel, The First Noel.
Nice.
Burdane Adair, a direct line from Devon Adair in Earth 2. She also played Beverly Barlow from Eureka, if you ever watched that.
I never watched it, but I've heard of it. I know it was was that sci-fi or like TBS?
Sci-fi.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was
Yep,
sci-fi. Yeah. It's still like it's not far enough away for us to do it yet, but maybe when Bodhi takes over the show at some point, he can
bequeath it to him in our wills.
he can do Eureka and Warehouse 13 and all those early 2000s shows.
Right.
So those were and also Barbara Bosson. She was in Hill Street Blues and Murder One, and she was in The Last Starfighter. Zach probably knew that.
And
she was the mom.
Yeah, she was the mom.
And don't forget about Felton Perry, dude. He was awesome in this.
Yeah, who was that?
He was fucking Johnson from RoboCop.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Clarence Felder, who was the other kind of grizzled-looking thing guy. He was in the movie The Hidden. So we have to do that on Pad eventually.
I love that movie.
Yeah,
that was so good.
But he was in The Hidden as well.
There were a couple of characters in the background. It was Joseph Gian, I think his name is. He played the gay cop.
Oh yeah. The one that was getting sexually harassed by his partner the entire time.
The entire time. Like I was watching it and saying out loud, like this someone call HR.
Yeah.
Like
dude, I have a whole note about how she is harassing him every episode.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting because it's like on one hand it's sort of like progressive or whatever to put him in, and also he's not like that quote unquote stereotypical like version TV or movie version of a gay person. Like he kind of reads as like a straight male, right? So there's that. So like kudos, but then there still is that sort of like 80s mentality, I think, where it's like, oh, I can change him, and so she can relentlessly sexually harass him to try to convert him, and it's funny, right? Like it's supposed to be funny.
It's
and
played for laughs, but it's not.
But it's not. It's not funny. It's not funny at all. Yeah. So it is. What's the only relevant to me? One of the neighbors in the hallways, in the first episode. He's in the second episode too, and I think he's in the first season. Is Paul Link, and he played Grossman on Chips. Which is a show very dear to my
I knew
heart.
I recognized him.
Yeah, it was actually funny because I was watching. I was like, I know who he is, and I kept remembering him from an episode of Quantum Leap, actually. And then I looked it up, and I was like, oh yeah, I remembered watching Quantum Leap, remembering he was on Chips, but then I just forgot about Chips, and I remembered Quantum Leap. That's how my brain works. We're all just gonna go with it.
I'll tell you too, Diallo, facial hair changes everything for me back in the day because he had like a beard or a mustache in this.
Yeah, he didn't have any.
And I'm like, wait, why do I know that guy? Who do I? But the minute you take it off, you're like, oh, I know exactly who that is.
Yeah.
But sometimes that mustache can be very deceiving.
Which, so like, this is a little bit off track, but then it's like, okay, now I understand why Superman can wear glasses and you people might not be able to recognize him.
I think that's fair. That's
yeah.
fair.
It's like we spend all this time watching TV and like, I know that guy. I've seen him before. Where did I see him before? So
Yeah,
you can do the same
fair.
thing with Superman. It's the theme music, which is one of my favorite things in the world to think about and talk about and discuss, is by the great Mike Post.
Yep, I noticed that in the credits right when I saw it. I was like, oh, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, like Rockford Files, Hill Street Blues, Law, L.A. Law, Law and Order, Quantum Leap. Oh, Doogie Howser's Silk Stockings. But show that I actually want to do at some point, Tales of the Gold Monkey. Although I don't know if we can because I think Stephen Douglas. I think he's persona non grata. But I loved that show when I was a kid.
It's such a bummer.
Yeah, Magnum PI. Anyways, so yeah, the main episode. Harry is a police officer. He's a little like rough around the edges. He lives in an apartment complex. The opening episode starts with him getting a call to stop a jumper. On his way out, he talks to an old a neighbor downstairs that is a very dear friend of his. He has to head out, stops the jumper by throwing a watermelon on the ground and showing the jumper what would happen if he actually landed. I recognized the jumper too, but I couldn't. I
did
couldn't
too,
find
and I
his
looked it
name
up on
anywhere.
IMDb, and I couldn't figure out who he was.
Yeah, I know him
I think he looks like a lot of guys from things.
I could swear he was somebody. Anyways,
Kind of has like a Matthew Perry vibe to him.
Yeah.
One other thing, Hooperman, when he comes, because this is 1987, he comes out of his house and the windows are smashed on his car, right? And he's a cop. And I was just thinking, see, this has happened in San Francisco for far longer than just like the last few years. So San Francisco is fine. It hasn't gone down the tubes. It's been terrible for my entire life. The same thing happened to me in 2000. My car window was smashed. This is nothing new. Anyways, he saves the jumper, but then he gets to his precinct and there's a call that there's a situation near his home, and he immediately rushes back, finds out that it's his landlady, who's his friend, who was murdered, and then the rest of the story unfolds as they try to solve who killed her. He gets willed the building, so he becomes the owner of the building, just like that. And towards the end of the episode, he hires a building manager who discussed earlier is Deborah Ferrantino. And the second episode, we see some things develop between them, and it's a pretty interesting dynamic for the rest of the show. And that is Hooperman. What did you think, Corey?
Halfway through the pilot, I was already logging on Amazon to go try and find the DVDs to purchase. It looks like Season 2 is a lot easier to get a hold of than Season 1, so I'm going to have to go to eBay. They are all on YouTube, that's, for sure. But, dude, I loved this. I obviously grew up watching John Ritter. I loved John Ritter so goddamn much. I was a huge Three's Company's fan as a kid. Skin Deep is fantastic. And I was impressed by how well this show rode that line between comedy and drama. When he finds out that the landlady is dead, he cries like in front of Felton Perry. Like he starts crying, And he's like, and no one made fun of him. Like, they knew what she meant to him. And he even says she was like a mother to him, made him breakfast like every day. And then and I loved it, like, as he was saying that, like, he started crying when he said that. And then at the end of the episode, because he also gets the dog too, so they're trying to throw in this like whole levity thing with the dog that he doesn't get along with and everything. And it's great what they do with him in this later in the episode with dogs all farting and everything. But like at the end of the episode, or I think it was the end of the second episode, where he's got the lady working on it or something. It might have been the first episode.
It was the first episode. Okay. Yeah.
So he's sitting there. He's trying to talk to the dog, or he's talking sort of to the landlady, being like, "Thanks for leaving this to me. I really appreciate it." Kind of being sarcastic, because it's also, he talks about how like owning this thing is going to make him go bankrupt because he can't afford it. But then he just starts weeping, and I felt it, and I was like, dude, this is like, you saw a full range of John Ritter, and I was not expecting that level of emotion to be in any episode, let alone the first one. So I was really impressed by that. I just, the partner, the gay partner with his straight, I guess, female cop, that was so uncomfortable and so wrong. But also I do like how the show does present the gay police officer. They don't like he's not flamboyant or anything like that. But then, one of John Ritter's neighbors, is a little bit more flamboyant. So it's nice to have more, exposure, to different lifestyles and stuff like that. And I love that. I loved all that kind of stuff. But again, my takeaway was, after watching Partners in Crime and then this, I was like, they got away with, quote unquote, they got away with it because it's San Francisco. And I guess it was expected. But I actually thought it made it feel kind of progressive. And then, so many good, character actors, and just, I thought everyone did a great job. That old grizzled cop, the captain. I think it was the second episode where, did you guys watch the second episode as well?
Yeah, with the captain and John Ritter in the office, and there was another crying scene.
Yeah.
Is that what you're like? Yeah.
Yeah, where she kind of comes out, like, because, she's like, I got to be a captain, tough as nails, but she closes the door. She kind of confides into John Ritter's character, who they don't seem to get along, but she confides in him that she's getting a divorce, and she's upset by it. And I loved how the show tackled these like real emotions and real problems, but and then John Ritter wasn't funny during those scenes. He did what he was supposed to do, and it was great. And then he was funny when he needed to be funny, and then the dog farts when it needs to fart, and that's great. But then it's also just as heartwarming in the next scene. So it's just, if you have, I don't know, NYPD Blue on one hand, Hooperman in the middle, and then Sledgehammer on the other side of the spectrum, like Hooperman does solidly fit like right in the middle.
Yeah.
I think this pilot is the perfect pilot. Like this is a time when shows would be nominated and win Emmys when they rightfully deserve them, and it didn't feel like a political power play, because this show is perfect to me. I remember watching it as a kid, because I'm a huge John Ritter fan as well. I mean, you guys all referenced stuff that you love him in, and I do too. And there's a movie in the early 80s called Hero at Large that he did, where he's a superhero. Well, he's like an struggling actor playing a superhero, like dressing up as basically like they do for Marvel movies now, and at premieres of theaters and stuff like that. I think it's Kevin Bacon's first movie, by the way, too. And he ends up saving someone's life, and he becomes a quote-unquote real hero. And highly recommend that if you've never seen that movie. But this movie, this show is so good, and he's such a great actor. Even stuff that he was in that wasn't all that great, he was always great in. So it's super heartfelt. I got choked up, too. The final scene of the episode where he, starts to break down and cry. You really feel it, and it's really sweet. And I love that it's 30 minutes. It's a very like offbeat, quirky show, because I'd say 90% of shows at this time would have been an hour for a quote unquote drama with hints of comedy or whatever. It rides that fine line. I think it's amazing. I thought everything about it was great. One thing I'll point out was they're playing "Gotta Get Up" by Harry Nielsen, in the beginning of the episode, and I'm like, where do I know that song from? The show Russian Doll, which was on Netflix, used that song in every single episode as a reoccurring Groundhog Day type theme. I love that it was set in San Francisco. Like, you didn't have to set it in San Francisco, but I love that you did, because I think, again, typically these shows would be set in New York. And then the inclusion of a, not flamboyant gay character was cool, like stereotypical. And then the neighbor in his apartment building reminded me a little bit of the guy on Kimmy Schmidt.
I was about to say he was like Titus Andromedon's like father or something like that.
Right. Right. There's like shades of that. and I think when we get to my show too, you pick up things that you see on TV or whatever. It's all good. It's a form of flattery, right? So, I thought it was great. It is interesting contextually now where we are, because I think back in the day, people probably thought like the female cop trying to turn the gay cop was sweet or like endearing, aw, like she's got a crush on him. I've been on the flip side to gay clubs with my gay friends, and I had a friend introducing me to everybody. This is my straight friend, Zach. This is my straight friend, Zach. And one guy goes, straight to my bed. And I'm like, well, no, I'm good. He's like, look, honey, I got a lot of money and the drinks are really strong. We're going to have a good time tonight. I'm like, okay.
Oh my, Captain.
Oh my. So, I think in 1987, Diallo, you said? What a kind of ahead of its time show. And Stephen Bochco, like, he took risks, right? You mentioned Cop Rock.
Yeah,
that was a huge risk, and hats off to the dude for getting that show made, because I think most people would be like, a cop musical show? Ridiculous. Whether it worked or not is here nor there. The fact that he got it made is awesome.
Yeah, no, that's always been my feelings on Cop Rock. It's like, yes, it's a joke to all of us. We all agree it's a joke. But it's also impressive that he was able to actually do it. And also, too, try something different. Fuck it. Like, everything is so, especially nowadays, so safe and the same that maybe we need a Cop Rock, like, these days.
You could do it now. I mean, there's so much freaking content now. It's like, I'm surprised it hasn't been done.
Right? And I just got to say, because there's going to be a Seinfeld reference in Max Monroe, I do want to say that there was a Seinfeld character in this episode, although I won't say where he is in the pilot. You'll have to find out. But it's from he was in the episode of Seinfeld called The Fatigues. And if you've seen Seinfeld and you know that episode, you can probably figure out who I'm talking about, because he was pretty prominent in that episode. But my final thoughts on this, I said it at the very beginning, like halfway through the first episode, like 15 minutes in, I was already trying to find it on DVD, because I'm such a sucker for the down and out police detective as well. In the episode, the pilot starts with like him waking up like on his shitty ass, mattress on the floor. He rolls over and starts doing push-ups. He does like 2, and then he like makes himself like coffee by pouring in like half a thing of Folgers into like a beer mug, and then filling it with water, putting ice cubes in there, stirring it with his finger, and then just chugging it. And I'm like, I love this kind of shit. I love police detectives that are like this. And but he's more than that. And that's what I was expecting him to be one way, and then he's very in touch with his emotions, and I thought that was so refreshing to see him cry like that on screen. And they lingered too, like they didn't like just fade after like 10 seconds, they kept the camera on him, and even the dog was like licking his face. It was good, man. It was a damn good episode, and I can see why it won an Emmy. Diallo, final thoughts on Hooperman?
Yeah, again, I remember actually watching it when I was in high school at the time, and again, this kind of show wasn't really in my sphere of things I normally would watch, but I remember watching it being like, oh man, I really liked that, and yeah, a little slightly political commentary, but it always bugs me when people today complain about, they say this is woke or that is woke, right? And because they're complaining as though some of these things are new, right? Like, why are you putting this this gay character in? Why are you putting this black character in? Why? And you know, I'm always like, did you like it? But that same person might like Quantum Leap, which if you go back and watch Quantum Leap, that was one of the wokest shows that has ever existed, right? So I'm watching this show that came out in 1987, and you have like unheard of, just having a gay character at all, but then also having a gay character that wasn't like flamboyant. My man was just living his life. He was just doing his job, and that was it, right? That was like as you should be, right? You had this cop character in the second episode. He actually talks about how he's not the model of masculinity. He doesn't go around shooting people. He talks about how he had to pull his gun on somebody and the impact that has on him. And you see him cry in the first episode, you see him cry in the second episode, and it's not a thing that is made to look him weak, but the first episode is something that makes him endearing because he's very human, but in the second episode it almost in a certain way makes him stronger as a way to connect with the captain. This show, these ideas are nothing new. They are very human, and it was kind of like it sort of like reawoke me to this idea that even in 1987 all of these things existed. It's not from some agenda that somebody came up with 2 weeks ago. It's something that's been going on and on and on and on. So I was really happy to watch it. I loved the show. I felt like it could still be on today. Like maybe in some ways it was well ahead of its time. I mean, it lasted for 2 seasons, but it kind of has all this makeup that I feel like it could actually thrive more today than it did back then.
And well, all the things you just talked about is what helped make it feel contemporary and not of its time. And I almost kind of maybe feel like at that time that might have been to its detriment. And I think about someone who would be watching it, like maybe my father, and he'd be like, oh, why is this cop crying? And I think my dad would probably be more like that one cop, the older grizzled cop. And that guy was even like, I think it was in the second episode, he's like, oh, I remember when cops were cops and there were no, no, I think he said flamers or something, implying the gay people. And then he was like, no women were cops and cops were men and no one cried. And I'm like, I feel like that is a lot of people probably watching cop shows probably feel that way, and my dad probably would have as well. And I kind of feel like that might have been the reason this only lasted 2 seasons. Now both of these shows, technically all 3 of them, I had never even heard of, and I might have misspoke on the Partners in Crime one. That was 1984. I was born in 78, so I was only 6 when that came out. So of course I'm not going to know that one. This one came out in 87. I was born in 88, so I was 9 when this one came out. I don't know, you're 9. You don't know why you don't know things exist. You don't. Usually a lot of times at that age, if your parents aren't watching it, you don't know it exists. Or was I watching Fox at that point? When did Fox start?
Fox came out in 87, so yeah, 86, 87.
Okay,
so.
And I was a big Fox kid, so I think I was just glued to Fox probably the entire time. So, but yeah, Hooperman. I agree with you, Diallo. I think this could actually hold up well today, although I honestly don't think this could be, I wouldn't want to see it rebooted, because I do think a lot of the DNA of the show and what makes it good is John Ritter. I think he is exceptional in what I saw with him in this.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we love John Ritter, obviously, but, I mostly know him from Three's a Crowd. No, but, we know him as the comedic genius, right? And, I've seen him in other things, but watching him in this really showed me how great an actor he actually really was. It just, the sort of like the effortless execution of, he just was present, and he was so good, and I missed that guy.
The sincerity. always came across.
Yeah, it just was so good,
and especially since we sort of knew him as a he's like Three's Company and Three's a Crowd. He's like such a physical comedy guy. Like he does a lot of goofy physical stuff, and his hair gets all crazy. Now in the pilot, they have a fun little when the water gets shut off, and he's washing his hair, and it's all big and everything. But that's kind of the extent of sort of the funny. Look at me, I'm funny sort of physical comedy there was. The rest of it, there was more like vocal comedy, when it did happen, but I don't think a lot of the comedy even came from John Ritter. Mostly it comes from the dog farting.
Yeah. We get that. That's why he's so great, and like it just like as a reminder that, he was a. And I used to watch the show that he had. It was like his comeback show. It was when he passed on. And it was actually it was a really good show, and so he got a chance to shine again. But life be lifing. So
life be lifing. Zach, final thoughts on Hooperman, man.
Nothing more to add. Nothing more to add to it. It's a great show, and everybody should watch it. It's all the episodes are on YouTube, so go check it out. It's way ahead of its time. It's a beautiful show with a beautiful lead actor. Spotlight.
There you go. Couldn't have said it better myself. How you doing, buddy? You okay?
Oh, let's keep going.
Zach's just like, just keep going, guys. Just keep going.
This is Zach's flu game, like Michael Jordan
Jesus
back
Christ.
in
the
the 90s.
I'm like, of course mine has to be the last episode, so I gotta.
I'm sorry, buddy. All right, so Zach, while you still have the energy, why don't you take us into Max Monroe Loose Cannon? Hey everybody, Corey here. I just want to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
Hey everybody, I'm Tim.
And I'm Dean.
And we're the hosts of Talking Back. We're a retro-based podcast covering movies, comics, video games, and more.
Check us out every Monday where we hit the rewind button and dig into some of our favorite content from the past. We like to keep things fun, lighthearted, and informative.
Do you feel like you need more nostalgia in your life? Then check out Talking Back. We're available everywhere podcasts are found.
Have you been wondering where's the beef? Well, on our podcast, Throwback Trivia Takedown, you might just find that out, as well as some other things about the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
We're a nostalgic-based trivia show that pits two challengers head-to-head in a duel of the decades, with categories ranging from movies, TV, and music, to slang, food, and fashion. You're sure to get the best in retro-themed trivia.
So strap on your jelly shoes, grab a surge, and walk like an Egyptian to your favorite podcast app and check out Throwback Trivia Takedown.
I heard even Mikey likes it.
And now, back to the show.
Does that sound familiar to you? Because that theme song for Max Monroe is by the band Yellow, who, of course, did Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Uncle Buck, Secret of My Success, countless 80s movies, and they were a synth pop duo from like Germany or Denmark or something like that. Anyways, that was the big kind of hook for this show. But Max Monroe is a CBS show that aired from January 5th to April 19th in 1990. It starred Shadoe Stevens. Most people will recognize his voice. He was the voice of America's Top 40 on the radio. He was the center square, I think, for many seasons of Hollywood Squares. He's in a fun cult film called Tracks from the, I think, late 80s, TRAXX, where he's like, it's a wacky film. You got to go check it out. I think you can find it on YouTube as well for free. Bruce Young, who I think a lot of people will recognize from Basic Instinct, good supporting actor, has been in, countless well-known movies like Risky Business and Jurassic Park 3 and et cetera, et cetera. He plays Max Monroe's partner. I'm a little bit ahead of myself. Before I get to any of that, this show was produced by Dean Hargrove and Fred Silverman. if those names sound familiar, their track record is pretty outstanding. My Three Sons, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Columbo, Perry Mason, Matlock, Jake and the Fat Man, et cetera, et cetera. It just keeps going until Murder 101, I think, was the last show that the two of them worked on it together, but at least Dean Hargrove did.
Don't forget McBride Fallen Idol with John Larroquette.
Well, there you go. Yeah. And so this show lasted for 8 episodes on CBS. This was one of their duds. You know, these shows come out and it's at a weak time of the year where they test it out and it doesn't do well, and then it gets yanked and you never hear from it again. Shadoe Stevens was, like I said, more known for his voice, and then this was his show. He played Max Monroe, who's a kind of a rough and tumble cop, a cop that plays by his own rules. It's very cliche. If we hadn't seen it prior to this, we've seen it many times later. I feel like in some ways this is a precursor to Nash Bridges. There's your San Francisco connection, because it's got hot cars and it's got good hair on the leading actor, and maybe the better supporting actor with Cheech Marin. Well, not better, just like a fun kind of counterpart to the, wisecracking lead. And Bruce Young is like, the guy who tries to... Max Monroe puts Bruce Young's character, Charles Ivers, in sticky situations. Consistently in these episodes, Charles is having to dress up or go undercover, either in drag or, in this case, with the episode we're going to talk about tonight, Ransom, disguising himself as Tony Todd. So this show... The pilot is not available online. This is technically the 4th episode out of the 8 that aired. There's like a pilot, and then it's a 2-part pilot, and then one more episode after that. I actually have those on VHS. I still have my VHS tape of SLP, when you stretch the tape out to 6 hours and it's got a bunch of stuff on it. I have about 4 or 5 episodes of Max Monroe on this tape. Max Monroe, he's a LA cop, and so there's a lot of fun, especially if you live down in Los Angeles or Santa Monica. There's a lot of great moments in this episode that we watched, The Ransom, where you see not 3rd Street Promenade, but you see hotels right down by the beach, and you're like, I know exactly where that is.
Yeah, there's a shot with them on the bluffs sitting out overlooking on Ocean Boulevard.
Right. If you've ever been to Santa Monica, you'll recognize a lot of these places. But the premise of this episode is Max Monroe goes to Detroit. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I forgot that it was also set in Detroit.
Yeah, because when I saw that come up, the Detroit part, I was like, what? I was like, Zach, I thought this was all California stuff. And yeah, it's only Detroit for a second. But I was like, oh, Zach, you love your Detroit stuff too.
It's got Detroit, it's got Los Angeles, it's got Santa Monica, it's got neon, it's got hot cars, it's got big hair, it's got everything that I want, and it's got a great theme song too.
Yeah.
But the premise of this episode is a mobster kidnaps a key witness, Tony Todd, and Max has to locate him. In the meantime, he's got to basically thwart these 3 thugs that have kidnapped Tony Todd's character.
Tony Todd isn't even listed in the credits on this episode, by the way. Yeah, on IMDb.
Yeah, Tony Todd's not listed in this. Neither is Shannon Tweed, who also has a kind of surprise appearance in this episode. But Max Monroe, it's very like run of the mill. But Shadoe Stevens was kind of like a unique person to see as a leading actor, maybe in the same way that like David Rashi was somewhat unique, seeing him play Sledgehammer, like a silly guy, but he still kind of had an edge to him too, where he could be cool, and I thought he was cool. I mean, I love this show simply because I love Shadoe Stevens. I kind of, in many ways, wanted to be Shadoe Stevens as a kid. He was the narrator on The Tick. He's got a pretty he's got a pretty extensive voiceover career. And he just never hit it big as a on-screen actor. He was also on that show with Harry, what's his face from Night Court, where it was like Dear Dave.
Yeah. I think it's just called Dave's. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Dave's World, right? Because it's based on a comic.
Yeah.
Saturday morning comic.
Was it a Fox show?
No, it was a CBS show.
CBS show?
But he was the like supporting actor on that show, which was cool because, you know, he got like a second lease on life. He just never hit it as a leading actor. So really quickly, just a segue, it was Dave's World. He was on 98 episodes of Dave's World with Harry Anderson. So
Was he doing voiceover on that, or was he actually on it?
No, he's like the buddy on that show.
Okay.
He's the buddy on the show. So anyways, I'll let you guys kind of get into it. Diallo, what are your thoughts on Max Monroe, Loose Cannon?
Well, I loved seeing Tony Todd.
Yes, dude.
That was great.
And this is right around the time he's did Night of the Living Dead. Like, he's a freaking movie actor in 1990.
Yes.
Yeah, he was great. That took me back because I started hearing him being Klingons and horror people, and it was great. Love the guy. Bruce Young also, that was really cool for me too, because I kept watching. I was like, I recognize him from something. He was on a couple episodes of Highlander, the series. I really remember.
That's right. Yeah.
And he also was on ER. Not the ER with George Clooney, but the ER with George Clooney.
Yeah, the first ER. Yeah, we're gonna have to bring that to the table when we do hospital episodes.
Yeah, so that was great. I love him, and he was also just super randomly. I actually really like Jurassic Park 3, and I know a lot of people don't, but I really like it, and he was in that also. That is about all I liked about this. I never really understood Shadoe Stevens, like, ever, and it always
clearly. Most people didn't because that's why he didn't have a career.
When I was kind of, it was like I kind of always felt like at a certain point he was being pushed on the public, to like we were trying to be inceptioned for him to have a career, like him and Joe who's it, Joe Esposito. What's
Joe Piscopo?
Joe Piscopo, yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like at a certain point, I felt like we were supposed to no, you're supposed to accept him. Like, guys, he's supposed to be a thing, and it just never was a thing.
We talked about that on our Dead Heat episode. It's like how society tried to force Joe Piscopo down our throats.
Yeah.
He does have his moments, though. He's pretty damn funny when he was on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. But anyway, and so that kind of like that when I was watching this, that I had a little bit of that feeling of like, oh, this was in that era when they were like trying to make him a thing, and he never really was. I thought it was fine. I was more critical of it than I think I was enjoying it. It just felt a little too like, I don't know. The music was like kind of like overpowering in the background. It was like constant. And that was like constant 90s, and like it just never let up. And I didn't really buy him being like, the loose cannon. Like it seemed like everybody else was more a loose cannon than he was, but he was the one that kept stepping up and jumping into situations that I just wasn't.
He wasn't loose cannon.
Yeah, I wasn't really buying it. So it was okay. But I feel like it was another one where it probably could have used a little bit more workshopping to figure out the character a little bit more than what it was. So that's my unfortunate review.
Well, I will say before Corey jumps in, there's one moment in this episode. Well, actually, two moments in this episode where he goes off book as far as like not what a typical cop would do. There's a chase scene through the airport at one point that's supposed to make him look a little radical.
Yeah.
And then there's a moment where there's a shooting range where he has a character at the shooting range that he threatens to, basically get killed. And that sets up his like hothead style, but he's not a hothead. He's a cool cucumber.
Well, that was the part that I wasn't buying, though. I'm sorry. So it's like he was like he was grabbing the guy and pushing him through the firing range, and he was asking him questions, but then like to scare him, he was shooting the targets. And so I was like, well, why is that scary? Whatever. But then it got scary when he put him behind the targets, and I got that part. But I just don't buy Shadoe Stevens just physically as like, I know he was like acting that way, but I just didn't buy it, is what I'm saying. So it just, and it kind of, for me, it just tracked again to like, it was in that era where they were trying to make him a thing rather than him being a thing. And a little bit like Partners in Crime, it was more like they were kind of banking off the two actresses rather than them playing characters. And so
I think that's why I like Shadoe Stevens back then, because I'm like, I don't see this guy as a leading man, yet they're making him a leading man. Like, that's, to me, that was different. And I was like, oh, I kind of like that. That's why I liked it, because it just didn't fit the mold, you know, where Don Johnson clearly fit the Nash Bridges mold when they did workshop this and they came out with Nash Bridges 10 years later. So basically,
I didn't
or
like
5 years later.
I never watched Nash Bridges.
Corey, what's your thoughts on Max Monroe, loose cannon? Max Monroe.
I have a lot. I actually have a lot more thoughts on this show than any other show. But I think I'm going to land a little bit closer on Zach's side on this one. And it was because, I didn't like, I was kind of shocked by Shadoe Stevens. I was like, I'm not, well, actually, let me roll something back real quick. A couple things. One, this was the show that I was probably not, I'm not looking forward to watching it, but was like least interested in going into it because I wanted to watch, Linda Carter and Lonnie Anderson, my pick. I wanted to watch John Ritter with, Zach Diallo's pick. And I didn't know anything about this one, but I was like, sure, I will watch it and everything. So I kind of didn't have any expectations going into it or anything like that. And then Shadoe Stevens comes on screen and I see his name and it like, I get this giant lightning bolt because I realize I've heard his name mentioned so much in my childhood. I think my stepdad might have liked him or something like that because I'd always heard the name Shadoe Stevens, but I had no clue what he looked like. I had no clue who he was. And then all of a sudden, the name pops up and I'm flooded, from like my childhood. I'm like, oh my God, this is a name that I've heard, so much about. And then, he's interesting on the show. I wasn't put off by him, but he definitely plays it like a little bit cool, but also a little bit goofy occasionally. Like when he's trying to get his partner to come out of, not hiding. He was kind of on vacation and he was kind of doing this thing in the library and, okay, he's got a little goofy side to him and everything. And he kind of he's got an interesting look about him. And so I think I kind of fall more into your category, Zach, where I'm like, it's kind of interesting seeing him, lead a show like this. But then like the rest of the episode, I was like more excited about the fact that Tony Todd was in it. And I'm like, holy shit. I mean, this is Night of the Living Dead remake, Tony Todd. This is 1990. He looks fan-fucking-tastic. He has a great presence. Although I'm like, that motherfucker's a movie star. He should be on the movie screen and not on the TV screen right now because he's a fucking movie star.
Agreed.
And Tony Todd will always be a fucking movie star to me. Love that man. Also seeing a young Ray Abruzzo I was like, I'm kind of squinting because, the quality's not that great on YouTube. And I'm like, that asshole looks familiar. And yeah, he's like Sopranos and stuff like that, but he looked really young and kind of hunky in this. And I was like, okay, cool. But the main bad guy is another Seinfeld alumni, also a horror alumni. It's Sherman Howard, who plays Bub the Zombie in my favorite George Romero zombie movie, Day of the Dead. He was also one of Elaine's boyfriends that was in the hospital in the Junior Mint episode, where the Junior Mint goes inside of him. And I was like, oh my fucking God, it's Sherman Howard. So, that was awesome to see. It was a fun 45 minutes. Like it was a hoot. I thought I was watching the pilot, to be honest with you. I thought this was the pilot, which is why I was like, oh, is his partner Ray Bruzzo at first, and then he's gonna his regular partner was just on vacation for the first half of the episode, but all the silliness of like 90s, early 90s, TV shows, late 80s stuff, it's all there in the best way possible. I like Zach said, awesome hair, awesome cars, like over the top villains. I liked what they were doing with it, especially because I wasn't, it wasn't the one I was looking forward to the most to watch. Now, that being said, I think Hooperman's my favorite out of all three of them, but this one's definitely my second favorite. Partners in Crime is definitely going to be on the bottom of it for me.
Did you guys think that the courtroom assassin's gun looked a lot like Megatron?
Yes, yes, it did.
From that and I think this might be. I could be wrong. Probably am, but I'm just gonna say I'm not. This could be the first time you hear what a California breakfast is, which is grilled radicchio, goat cheese, and avocado toast. I believe this may be the first time you've heard avocado toast ever. And now it's like, with 5-10 years ago, avocado toast was everywhere in California. Oh my God, it's the greatest thing.
You're not making me eat that.
That's what she said.
Literally.
Yeah, that's what she said. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that line. And then, I mean, I'm going to echo what both of you say. This show is, you watch it and you're like, yeah, it's cliche or it's this or that. But then you can go, oh, also, like, I like the attempt. I mean, I don't know why, but just these kind of shows really appealed to me as a kid. Like the first show I ever picked for this TV Obscura was The Hat Squad, I believe. And I think that was at the same time that came out. And that lasted maybe a couple episodes more than this one. It's just a vibe.
The cliches aren't bad though, like all the time. Like I said on the Hooperman episode, I will always be a sucker for the down and out police detective. I love that trope, and it's a trope, it's a cliche, but I never get tired of it. And I also, I grew up watching police shows with my dad, so I like all variations of police shows. Maybe not Cop Rock, but I appreciate that it existed at one point. But, I used to watch NYPD Blue and all this kind of stuff. I used to watch Hill Street Blues, all those shows. I forgot, what was the one with Ray Montoya? What was it? Anyways, it doesn't matter. So I don't mind the cliche, man. Like, and what breaks the cliche is that Shadoe Stevens is not your typical sort of leading man type of vibe. He's got this weird, quirky X factor to him that I dug. So to me, that's what made it sort of different. I gotta say, and maybe it was just the episode because he didn't get a lot of screen time. His partner, I didn't even see why he was in the show, but I think it's probably the episode that I watched.
Based on my recollection, because I pretty much watched every episode of this show when it came out. Again, it's the Shadow factor. I think maybe I liked his name. I'm like, oh, Shadow's a cool name. Maybe that's why. I have no idea. But now watching it, I'm like, again, it's just he's different. I don't think his character is he's really he's not like support. He's less than supporting. You know what I mean? They don't pop up through it's really the Shadoe Stevens show. Just like Sonny Spoon was, Mario Van Peebles' show. And I think those came out at the same time too.
But to Diallo's point, I do agree he wasn't that much of a loose cannon. He kind of played things pretty straightforward. He chased a guy when he had to chase a guy. Guy was in drag. He was clever when he put the tracking device in his watch versus in the money bag and all this kind of stuff. It was actually somebody else who let the fake cops in, when they got like sort of ambushed and everything. So I was like, maybe he just needed to be more loose cannon-y and it would have, maybe propelled it. But as it stands, I don't think it really deserved the moniker of loose cannon, because he wasn't. I mean, Sledgehammer Now that's a loose
I
cannon.
literally was thinking Sledgehammer was a loose cannon. This also came out. What year was this?
1990.
Yeah, so it was. They'd already had two Lethal Weapon movies. That Martin Riggs is a loose cannon.
Yeah, Martin Riggs is the quintessential loose cannon.
Yes.
Yeah, and this guy, like you said, Corey, he was mostly doing his job. Like, oh, okay, you walked into a courtroom and you were talking loudly. Like, okay, like that's whatever. Like that's kind of like standard movie TV stuff for a main character. So I was not impressed. I also have like a little. I kind of don't want to take it here, and it was probably just the episode itself. But I don't know if you noticed, I'm black. And I noticed that the on one hand, there were a lot of black characters in the episode, which I found, I was like, oh, that's cool. But that was also a little bit of why I wasn't impressed by him. Because it was sort of like there were all these other people that were had a lot stronger personalities around him, but he
like
was,
Tony Todd.
Yeah, excuse me, like Tony Todd. But then he was the one. Like he was just jumping into action and doing all this stuff, and everybody stepped back, and I just wasn't buying it. And again, probably just the episode, like the other episodes probably didn't have that because probably didn't have that dynamic that they had. But it was just something I noticed, and I'm probably a little bit more sensitive to it than other people that are watching things. So.
Well, what about the fact that the hitman mistook his partner for Tony Todd?
Yeah,
and I'm like, they don't even look the same. But to the hitman, it was all black people look the same, so I'm just gonna take this shot. You know?
Yeah.
And I was just like, but that's not Tony Todd.
Yeah. So
that's not movie star Tony Todd.
Wait till you see him dress up as a woman, and then they think that he's a woman. But he's built like brick shithouse. That guy is one big dude.
Yeah. So
Did you guys notice the one moment, the one scene where they're all in the hotel room and everybody leaves except for the new partner at the time, and he just stands there literally for like almost 5 seconds.
Yeah,
and he
looks at his feet.
Yeah. That to me was the funniest part of this episode.
Yeah, that was good. But yeah, but even with the negatives, I actually still found myself very much enjoying the show. Like the fact that he wasn't a loose cannon didn't turn me off. I'm just like, guys, don't bill him as a loose cannon, and the show be, I think, better. I think our expectations would be better, but I still overall enjoyed myself with it because it moved very fast. I thought, like, pacing wise, it didn't, get lost in the minutia of crime work or police work and stuff. It kind of cuts right to the action and the chase. And when they do eventually have to do like this exchange in Santa Monica over on the over by the cliffs and everything, I was like, I think I used to smoke weed over right exactly where they are filming right there.
And Diallo's like, that's where I put all my boops. That's all my boops.
Yeah, literally.
That's where you go film your boops at.
Yeah, I literally did that last week from up there. I will say, in defense of the show, one thing that I'm holding against it, but it's not the show's fault at all, was the quality on YouTube. So that actually really, I think that really did have an effect, because I was watching it on my TV and it was so pixelated. It just was really hard. Like, I wasn't the whole time. I wasn't like this is terrible quality, but I wasn't able to like really get into it like the way that I like would if I could actually see a lot of things more clearly. So
maybe that was the hitman's excuse.
Yeah,
for
I actually thought that. I was like, at least I can't barely see. So
and I want to point out too, I had wanted to bring this to TV Obscura earlier in the year, or maybe like last year, but it was not available, and until I found it fairly recently, within the last few months, it popped back up. So whoever uploaded it, that's great, because it's one of those shows that's just very hard to come by. But yet someone had this is like a it's like my VHS copy.
Yeah, it was a VHS. You could see the lines in a certain part, and it was some TV station out of Pennsylvania.
Right. Yeah, which is always hilarious. I love that when you see the little thing. I was also going to point out really quickly that some of the actors that show up on this show are Ken Foray.
Yeah, I saw that.
And Branscombe Richmond.
I saw that too. Yeah.
And William Atherton. So, some fun, supporting actors show up on this show.
And speaking of, what's on YouTube and everything, guys and gals, as per usual, I posted the links to all 3 of these shows on Patreon. If you're listening to this on the free feed, I always make those posts free. So you can just go to our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/podcastingafterdark, patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. And you can click on the links. You can actually read the post without being a member. So go check that out. But I don't know how long the links will be active, because a lot of times I'll go back through older watch lists or something and they'll be gone. Like
Right.
the werewolf one that I posted back in the day that had, like, I think it was a playlist that had everything. They're gone now. So and then I've seen a few other of our TV Obscura watch lists are just, it's just that gray screen, when the link doesn't work. So guys and gals, go check this out if you can. All of them, hopefully they'll still be up by the time you listen to this, and if not, I apologize. Nothing we can do about that. So Diallo, lead us into final discussion on all 3 of these shows. Final thoughts on all of them.
Well, I was still stuck on season 3 of the Highlander because they pulled that playlist down, so that's really upsetting to me. Highlander the series. Yeah, so
How dare they?
Yeah, seriously. I was really getting into it. I love the show. So yeah, if I were to rank these, Hooperman is number 1, but not just in terms of these shows, but I think Hooperman is actually, now that I rewatched this in my adult life, I'm going to continue to watch the show, and it is starting to rank up there in terms of, like, just in terms of these first 2 episodes anyways, like one of the better shows that I've seen. So, and then I would put Partners in Crime second, and then Max Payne, whatever his show's
Max
name was.
Monroe, loose cannon.
Colon, loose
I'm
cannon.
so sorry, Zach. I know Zach has his heroes, and I don't mean to tear
It
down.
never sways me. I don't bend for what my likes are.
Yeah, no, it's not about like bending you, but I care about how you feel, and so we're still
Hey,
buddies.
nostalgia is one hell of a drug.
I'll still hug you next time I see you. But it actually was. I really loved watching, seeing the old skyline of San Francisco, and that was really fun because Sales Tower sucks, and it was just, I don't know, that was cool. There was like in Hooperman there was an old like Coca-Cola sign that I just remember seeing all the time driving through, and that was still there. So
Didn't that become the Yahoo sign?
Yeah, it did. It's true.
Yeah, because there's no way you can fake, like you have to shoot in San Francisco. Like, you can't fake that, with the hills and everything. So it was really nice to actually, I'm sure they probably did double duty LA, San Francisco, and everything for the seasons, but it was really nice to see them in San Francisco.
Yeah, like Monk did that, where it was like in San Francisco, but they filmed it all in LA mostly.
Yeah, like Marina Del Rey or some shit.
and did some shots in San Francisco, but yeah, this was definitely, at least those first 2 episodes in Partners of Crime also definitely was in San Francisco. So that was really cool.
Yeah,
to
Noe
see.
Valley. I think the concert, like one of the things looks like it took place in Noe Valley.
Yeah.
Nob Hill, that's what it was.
Yeah, so that was cool. And Max Payne could have been in San Francisco too.
It could have
It
been.
did. It became Nash Bridges.
It became Max Bridges.
Max Monroe crawled so that Nash Bridges could run.
Thank you.
Zach, final thoughts on all 3 of them?
Yeah, I think you can't put Hooperman in the same category because it's like an exceptional show. Clearly, it lasted 2 seasons, and back then 2 seasons was kind of a lot for a show to last that long. Max Monroe is...
Especially an offbeat show like that one.
Exactly, yeah. Max Monroe is just a fun, nostalgic trip for me. It brings back all the feels. It reminds me of, being 14 and like being in awe of certain... Why I idealized certain people, I have no idea. But I did. I just thought it was cool. I wanted that hair. And I'm starting to get it now.
You still have it. You have it now.
Yeah, I have it now. It's gray.
Yeah.
But I'll take it.
You got the ways.
Yeah, right. Partners in Crime was, I would say it felt like a CBS show to me. Like like I said, it would have been perfectly bookended with Murder, She Wrote, or like Cagney and Lacey or something like that. But it still was fun to watch, and also kind of like see, what was the appeal of Lonnie Anderson and Linda Carter. This may sound bad, but I'm being serious. Like, what was their appeal when they had more clothes on? Like, because they were billed as kind of sexy symbols back in the day. And then when you take that sexy side away, like, are they still fun to watch on screen? It's neither here nor there. I'd have to watch more of the show to kind of figure that out. But it is an interesting question. Like John Eric Hexum, the hunky guy from Voyagers and CoverGirl. It's like, when that guy's not taking his shirt off, is he still a good actor? You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
like it goes both ways. It doesn't just go for women. There's plenty of men that were, Tom Selleck is a perfect example of a dude that was a great actor, but also a sexy guy. So, David Hasselhoff, not that great of an actor, but he was on great shows like, Knight Rider or whatever. Anyways, Max Monroe, I love. I'll die by that sword any day. And Hooperman's just class. That show will go down in history as like a, as a undiscovered gem, I think, because I guarantee you this generation has no clue what Hooperman is.
And it occurs to me, dude, we saw Linda Carter in Hawkeye, right?
Yeah.
On TV Obscura?
Yeah, she was on Hawkeye. She played, I forget the character's name, but she was like second billing to...
Yeah, I thought she had a bit more... I thought she had a bit more fun in Partners in Crime. But yeah, my final thoughts on all three of them. I land exactly where you guys land with Hooperman. I think we all agree on that. That thing is a gem, and hopefully, not that we have any great power in this world, but hopefully someone hears this episode and goes out and checks it out and maybe champions that show, and we get a Blu-ray release or a DVD box set or something like that, because yeah, that show is too good to just disappear into nothingness. John Ritter deserves better than that. So and I'm with you, Zach. It's in its own category. It doesn't even come close to anything else. Max Monroe, I had fun with. It's a show I probably would have watched it at the time, but I don't feel like it's breaking any new ground. And I also have to kind of address the fact that I think a lot of the fun that I had with the episode was from the side characters, the special guests, Bub the Zombie and Tony Todd. That I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I think for me, that's what elevated that episode. And maybe, I don't know if other episodes would have sort of hit the same if it wasn't for that one. And, Shannon Tweed and everybody, like, it was a strong episode for character actors and like sort of these side names and stuff. And then Partners in Crime, I really wanted to like that more than I did. Diallo honestly summed it up the best, where he just said, I can see why it was only 13 episodes. I think they really needed to do something to create some kind of tension between Lonnie Anderson and Linda Carter. Like, even when they first meet in the pilot episode as being these two ex-wives, they're pretty cordial to each other and they're kind of nice to each other. Even they're like, they mention things and I'm like, I'm not vibing. I don't like to mention things like, maybe they're not like vibing on something, but I'm like, I'm not vibing with that. Like, it's just the chemistry between the two is too good. And I think they did have chemistry for the most part, but they needed to butt heads more. They needed that kind of chemistry, not the we'd like each other chemistry.
Corey, just real quick, and let me ask both of you, if you were to recast that today, what two women actresses would you put in there for those two roles?
Because I do believe that they tried to do it where they needed to be like these sexy bombshells. Weird. What happened? Oh, because I know.
The AI
Zoom does these like thumbs up. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Whatever.
I do believe that they cast them because they were sex symbols. So I think you have to go with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think they need to be people like women who are sex symbols. That being said, I'm bad at these recasting things. Zach, do you have any ideas?
It's so tough, and I get on a rant sometimes because I'm like, you see so many shows on that are streaming now. You go to Netflix and you see the same actor in 3 different shows, right? Or you go to Apple TV, the same actor is in 5 different shows. And that's, God bless them for locking that shit down. But these quote unquote networks like keep the same actors in their wheelhouse. They just put them in different roles in different shows. It's tough. I mean, nowadays, only because Kristen's watching it, the morning show, it'd be like Reese Witherspoon and Fairuza Balk, or not Fairuza Balk, Christina Ricci or something, and they wouldn't be married to him at separate times. Nowadays, they probably would want they be mistresses, or they both be married to him at the exact same time. So there's your tension there.
Now,
and that's why this doesn't
we're
have
popping.
tension.
I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
Because
and that's the thing. You want, that's what, I think that's what we all felt. The 3 of us felt when we watched that episode. We wanted there to be some kind of quirkiness to it, some kind of weird setup, but there really isn't. Diallo, to answer your question, for at least one of them, I would love to see Janina Gavanikar. She was in. She played Iden Versio in Star Wars Battlefront 2, but she's also in the morning show as well. She was in the League as Shiva on the League, but I think she was probably most known for True Blood.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. When you said her name, I knew who you were talking about, but yeah.
I probably botched her name, but
yeah.
She was, I loved her as Iden Versio in Star Wars Battlefront. She was great.
Know who you're talking about.
Yeah. But I think Zach,
know who you're talking about.
But Diallo, who would you cast?
Right off the top of my head, Eva Longoria was popping in for some reason. I just really saw her as the sort of like the prissy rich one, and then I don't know. I can't quite think of who would be the other character, but it would have to be someone like kind of what we were talking about, someone that's obviously beautiful, but is actually playing a street kind of like street version.
Tough.
Yeah. And I'm off the top of my head, I can't really think of anyone. And it would also have to be someone that is actually like at least a former A-lister. So
What about Angelina Jolie or something? I was
thinking Angelina Jolie. I literally was thinking
That'd be
Angelina
pretty cool,
Jolie.
Eva Longoria and Angelina Jolie.
Yeah,
I'd watch that.
Yeah, definitely. I literally was thinking that.
But you got to make them butt heads more. That's the thing.
She seems
almost
tough,
She almost is too, she could play, because she started off playing kind of weird quirky characters, right?
Right.
But also I was thinking Margot Robbie or something. I think she might play a good.
That would work too.
Yeah, Lonnie Anderson. Anyways, I kind of feel like that premise, and I kind of just asked that question because I think the premise is solid. It just needed a little bit more work with the execution for it to have gone further than it did. So
yeah.
And I think that of the 3 shows, I don't think you could reboot Hooperman because you need John Ritter unless you use his son. But even then, I would rather just let it. Yeah, I would rather just let it be. I think Shadow Stevens is kind of pretty connected to Max Monroe, and if it was somebody else, it just would become just another show.
Nash
I
Bridges.
think it would just be Nash Bridges. But I think Partners in Crime could actually be rebooted, and I think there's a lot of potential to actually do it right the second time, And I'm picking up what you're putting down, Diallo.
And instead of Vanessa Williams, Cardi B.
Right? Or Vanessa Williams is one of the 2 characters.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Actually, it would be Dua Lipa.
There you go. And Zach, I assume Bodie did not watch any of these shows with you.
No, but he listens to the theme song of Max Monroe by Yellow.
There you go.
I love that theme song.
Well, guys and gals, I hope you enjoyed this episode of TV Obscura. We've billed this one as Cali Crime Fighters because we were so close to San Francisco Crime Fighters, but it's Cali. Cali all the way. SoCal, baby. And Happy New Year's, everyone. Hope everyone had a great New Year's, and hope everyone kicks off their 2024 with light and love and happiness and all that happy horse shit. Zach,
Oh, that
I know you're not
bowl.
feeling good, so plug your stuff first, and we'll let Diallo do it afterwards, so you can kind of just melt away.
Oh, thank you. $2latefee.com, territorymarks.com. January is an off month for us. However, we will have fun surprises throughout. So subscribe to us if you're not already subscribed, and go to our Patreon, patreon.com/$2 late fee. We have a really big guest season premiere in February. She's been in a bunch of great 80s movies, and she's BFFs with Jill Sholin, so you probably know who it is already, but I'm not going to reveal that until you subscribe to patreon.com/$2 late fee. Diallo.
Can I throw out a hint, Zach, of who she is without saying it?
Sure.
She was on 2 episodes of Seinfeld, playing 2 separate characters.
And she talks about that on the show.
Awesome. Diallo, what you got going on, buddy?
First Noel Chronicles at firstnoelchronicles.com. Angela the Dark motion comic that you can find on YouTube. And I have my podcast Galactica Actually with Jamie Smith. We just started season 3, literally season 3, episode 1, where we are on New Caprica. We actually just covered the webisodes.
I saw that.
Yeah, which I was pretty insistent that we do those because I don't think that very many people cover that side of Battlestar Galactica, so I wanted to have some of that content there.
You got to do the web episodes, man. When you and I were watching it sort of together, I mean, I was kind of watching it on my own a little bit, and then I'd come over and watch it with you. You were like, no, we got to watch the web episodes before we go into season 3. So yeah, man, I fully stand by that as well.
Yeah, we have to really understand more why we hate Jammer than we do just by watching the regular episodes. And then also, I started recently my other podcast. It's more like a little tidbits, daily bites, so to speak. Not quite daily, but it's another review you didn't ask for, where I do quick reviews of movies, TV shows, mostly in some cartoons. There's no rhyme or reason to what I do. I just give reviews to things I happen to watch and I feel moved to write them. I just dropped Rebel Moon today. Did Godzilla -1. Check out Blue Eye Samurai. I did Marvels. So,
and they're bite sized. They're like 10 minutes ish around.
Yeah,
that, you know?
They average. It's about 7 minutes mostly. Sometimes 8. The one I did today was 9 minutes. But yeah, I try to keep it like pretty brief. Mostly high level. I try to keep things spoiler free, but every once in a while I do, drop something here or there. But it's just really just to kind of prime you for what to expect, because I do think even when I talk about shows on here that I don't like, I do think that there's potential always for things to be good. And sometimes I just think it's a matter of like your perspective going into something. So with a lot of the reviews I do on there, it's the intention is to kind of like get you in the right like mode so that you can receive what they're doing well enough. So, but not with Rebel Moon.
Oh man, yikes. And of course, guys and gals, you can check out podcastingafterdark.com. That's podcastingafterdark.com for all the links to our merch store. You can pick up a t-shirt, a lot of which were designed by yours truly. You can also go and check out links to our Patreon page, all our podcatchers, although I keep having to, delete podcatchers that we were on because I think Stitcher's not doing them anymore, and now Google Podcasts is disappearing as well. So it's an interesting time, guys. We saw the explosion of podcasts during, COVID and quarantine, and now, it's kind of shrinking back, but we ain't going nowhere. So you know what? The cream always rises to the top, as Macho Man would say. And as always,
catch us on Podcasting After Dark presents TV Obscura.
Be sure to subscribe to Podcasting After Dark and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Support Podcasting After Dark on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Podcasting After Dark. And visit us next time for another installment of Podcasting After Dark with Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer.
I'm John, and I'm the host of Action Action. Every week, I'm joined by James.
Heyo.
And Dustin.
Hello.
And each week, we review, debate, and rank a different action movie.
We're creating the ultimate list of action movies.
From awful to awesome.
So if you want to hear 3 more white guys with beards talk about action movies,
and argue about where they belong on our list,
and decide you hate us because we made fun of your favorite movie,
join us every Tuesday, and you can find us on your favorite podcatcher.
And Steven Seagal is a joke.